So what I'd like to share during this session is 5 lessons taught by my mentor. And this is actually a video by Robin Sharma. Now, Robin Sharma is a very popular Canadian writer or a self-help guru. And he wrote this book called The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. He also wrote this book called 5 a.m. Club. And basically, he is known to be quite a spokesperson and inspirational figure to many either athletes or businessmen, and industries. So I kind of watched this video and I felt that these kind of lessons was really relevant, especially for people around, our age, yes. Oh, wait. Are you able to see the colors, or is it too light? Wait, give me a second. I think it was actually.
Yeah, I can.
Okay, is it better now? Because I think it was supposed to be in black, but I think I must have changed something that led it to be that way. Give me a second. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so the first lesson that he puts out, and I can send you the link to this video afterwards, but basically this kind of presentation slide also goes through each of these lessons. So the first lesson is to run your own race. And when he says run your own race, it's about staying in your own lane. It's about understanding that we all have our own journeys to go across, and there is kind of no competition when it is your own decision. And that is a way for you to firstly distinguish yourself from the rest of the competition. And right now, sometimes when we talk about career opportunities and stuff like that, it almost seems that every kind of industry is being saturated, and it's really hard to find a job and etc. and things like that. Or there's a lot of societal pressures in terms of achieving the best that you can. And therefore, by staying in a lane, you kind of prevent yourself from being affected by these kind of external pressures. It also means that your opportunities and your potential to exceed is limitless, because you don't have to compare yourself to your peers in terms of, like the kind of, let's say, number of internships, or like how much money you make, and etc. And when you think about it, right, the best and the most successful people in life, or at least those that we hear about, people like Steve Jobs or like Mark Zuckerberg or things like that, people that we think are like geniuses, they stay in their own lane. They created something because that they believed they could, and not because they were trying to replicate something that other people were doing. So when you get yourself in that path where you are following everybody else, it can be quite hard to either lead that rat race, or it can be hard to feel like you're doing anything that is more worthwhile than anybody else. You can kind of get yourself lost in that kind of routine of every day just studying and working just to reach that next goal of meeting expectations set by either society or your friends at a similar age. And as time passes, you might feel that your life might not be that meaningful as you would want it to be. So that's the kind of first lesson. Do you guys have any thoughts about that? No? Do you feel like that's something that you've had to kind of like consider before about this kind of thing about, you know, should I compare myself with other people, or, you know, should I just like focus on myself?
I think it can be taken as either way. It can be constructive or destructive. So it depends on how you take it. So if you compare yourself to others and you let negative emotions get blended with it, it'll be a pretty bad outcome. But if you compare it in such a way that it is constructive, I think the results can actually be good. So I don't know. That's my take on it.
Does anybody have like any other takes on this or thoughts? But yeah, I agree with Vishal and what you're saying. I think that what this really means is that you really have to understand yourself first. You have to understand what kind of person you are. You have to understand the mentality that you're taking. And you have to be in control of your decision. Because like even when you say that like you may compare yourself with other people, but you must have control of yourself and your emotions and be like, I'm only going to compare them to a certain extent, or I'm going to compare them, but I'm also going to acknowledge that I am myself and that I can choose a path that is better suited for me compared to other people. If not, you're going to feel a bit lost. So that's the kind of conundrum that I think that we will be facing, you know, especially in the 20s and, you know, 30s and etc. Because a lot of things are happening during this period of time. You know, I'm finding that like my friends are, you know, getting married or getting a job and etc. and things like that, and you're just like, wow, okay, I'm not doing those things. You know, my path is a bit different. You know, and my path may not seem like the most successful path. So I think it's really about knowing yourself. Okay, the second lesson. Well, Sabrina, yeah, because I also went to the army, so I'm like 23, so that's why. So some of my friends are already working. But the second lesson is be willing to be eccentric. So in this lesson that is delivered by Robin, what he's saying is that it's something that I've hinted before about people like, you know, Elon Musk or Steve Jobs. It's about, do you want to be part of the 95% people, or do you want to be above that? Because a leader is also about pushing boundaries, and sometimes it also means pushing unconventional thoughts. And a quote that he mentions is that if you're confused, celebrate it, it means that you are still free. Now, I understand that there can be two different school of thoughts on this. What I think that he is trying to say is that, have you ever thought about, you know, a certain non-for-profit organization or social initiative or even like a business model, and you are like, wow, okay, like that's really good and really relevant for this society, and oh, it's very profitable, oh, it's meeting kind of consumer demand and etc. Now, these are things that we always think after we see how successful a certain business model or social initiative is, and we are like, oh, of course, like why didn't I think about that before? Well, it's because these people were the first to kind of push those boundaries or either get a competitive advantage in that area. And that's why sometimes the kind of message that I'm trying to push is that if you feel that you are sometimes pushing unconventional messages, it may mean that you are not wrong and that you are heading in a good direction. But I think it's always good to get feedback from the team that's around you about how far you should push it and whether it sounds relevant or not. Okay, that's all I have to say to explain it. What do you guys think about it? Sarah?
I think this need a lot of courageous to be eccentric because like you are doing not the same as other people.
Yeah. Sabrina?
I agree with the statement in a sense. I mean, I really like the statement, first of all, not just agree, but how do you know that you are being the good 5% who's doing something meaningful versus you're being the very scary 5% like Elizabeth Holmes, you know?
Yes. Totally. For Sarah and Vishal, do you guys know who like Elizabeth Holmes is? Yeah. So Elizabeth Holmes is this, Sabrina, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a pharmaceutical kind of CEO that was pushing a certain product that talk about DNA testing. And she would kind of have that kind of Steve Jobs presence around her. And I think it was found that she even tried to change her accent a bit to sound more commanding. And what we found that it's a fraud, you know. So it was fine masterclass of entrepreneurship, but it was deceive to the people. And I think right now, I'm not sure what's happening with her. Like she's either facing charges or like she's going to jail or something like
Oh,
that.
she's happily married in Silicon Valley. She's rich. Nothing happened to her. She's very like she's just away from the spotlight. So what she did was she actively like created this company. There were investors. There was an executive decision board. The FDA was routinely investigating the progress. The product didn't exist. There was She built a billion-dollar business around a product that doesn't exist.
I think that this kind of statement is to talk about leadership and kind of like that courage to explore. It doesn't really define whether you're a good or bad leader. Of course, that is something that is important to take note to be a good leader. But like what you said, Sabrina, I think that if you want to be someone that kind of be like that leader in that field, whether it's being someone that's might be an inspirational kind of scientific figure or like Elizabeth Holmes, you kind of have to kind of push those boundaries. And which direction you push is of course dependent on your ethics and values that ground you. Does anybody have any thoughts, or shall I move on to the third lesson? Okay. But yeah, I think what Sarah said is really important about that it takes a lot of courage to be eccentric. And I personally find that that has taken me a lot of experiences where I've had to say something that people might not agree with me. And in response, I've had to get feedback from them that, hey, planning, I don't think this is feasible. And that I would either reconsider my point of view, or I have to be like, but like, why do you say that, and stuff like that. So I think it's something that takes kind of a long journey, and it's something that I've had to kind of actively push myself to fight for it. So the third lesson is standing for world class. So this basically talks about maintaining professionalism and basically being able to distinguish between your personal and business life. And that is what he says would best be able to give you your optimum self. What this means is that know your setting, and that would give you the drive to perform in that setting. So for example, if you're at home and you kind of decide that it's a day to laze around and etc., then you dress in whatever clothes you're comfortable with, and that you would kind of focus on enjoying yourself and making sure that you're not distracted by other kind of emails and notifications. Whereas like if you are heading out, let's say, to a business setting, that you would dress appropriately and that you would not kind of carry those habits that you maintained that when you were in the house to the business world. Or let's say if you are meeting a friend for catch up and things like that, then you would kind of be professional, and by being professional, you kind of make use the best amount of your time. Like imagine like right now, I think a good example would be during this pandemic last year when we had online learning and stuff. I personally felt that for a couple of months, I would just kind of wake up and go to my classes and stuff. I personally found that like that wasn't very productive for me because I still felt very lazy. I still felt very attracted to my bed. So what that meant was that I would start my day with a shower and changing my clothes so that I would get ready for these classes. And that is something that we can also carry with ourselves as we approach this year, where hopefully there can be more physical studies. Yeah. Does anybody have any thoughts on this? I think the main message of this one is more to make sure that you always set standards for yourself, because as soon as you kind of let yourself loose, it can spiral down, and you may find yourself kind of mixing emotions and kind of just not doing well in both aspects because you're unable to perform well in your professional settings, and you're also unable to relax well when you are having your alone time or your kind of family time. Right, so the fourth lesson is to be deep versus to be light. So this basically means about seeking mastery within the industry. And that means it's all about this thing where like, do you want to kind of have all your fingers like in different areas, or do you want to focus on a specific area that you want to work on? For example, like focusing on Toastmasters, on improving our public speaking and our leadership skills. How much do I invest in that? I think that's something that my Toastmaster mentor was saying as well. It's about understanding your time and understanding your priorities. He mentioned that when he first started off in Toastmasters, he knew that he wanted to be good in public speaking and leadership, and therefore he made sure that 30% of his time was spent on Toastmasters for those 2 or 3 years. Now, these from last year till these next coming years, he knows that he wants to focus on mentoring. And therefore, the kind of role that he takes up in Toastmasters is kind of more administrative, less of him saying these speeches and things like that, because he already spent a period of time where he is focused and invested in improving that public speaking aspect. And now he's focused on mentoring. So it's always having an understanding of how much time we have, because it's almost impossible for us to kind of dabble in many aspects and be good in all of them. So, and always thinking about problems. When we approach these problems, are we being superficial or do we go the extra mile? Let's say right now, like we have tasks like that, like Toastmaster committee members have to do and stuff like that. How are we approaching these issues? Are we doing the best we can, or just trying to like let it like do it to a degree where it's acceptable and leave it as that? Because I think each of us, we truly know like what kind of potential we can reach and whether what we're doing is to the best of our ability. And of course, like going the extra mile tends to bring out the best reward for you. I think the last lesson that he spoke about in this video was to be kind. Oh, I think I made a mistake. Yep. And he mentioned about being appreciative and showing gratitude towards your relationship. I think that's a very important aspect of being a leader, which has been mentioned by all three of you. And that is to be empathetic with your team and to put yourself in their shoes. Because firstly, it kind of achieves the best outcomes in terms of decision making as well as team management. And secondly, the way that we operate as, I guess, humans is that we tend to kind of want to do something that we enjoy doing. And that's all about feeling appreciated and feeling gratitude. And often those are the things that kind of make a good team excellent. It's not just about meeting key responsibilities and tasks that is being listed in the description, but it's also whether or not your team member or your team leader chooses to go the extra mile can also be because of how communicative he has been with the team and how much affection that he feels towards the project, because that's just how human beings are. Do you guys have, what do you guys think about this? Maybe Vishal? Oh, you're on mute.
Hello?
Yeah. Hi.
I think I'd have to go with the fact that, so basically a leader in the environment, because the actual work is usually done by everybody along with the leader as a team. So I agree with the point of being appreciative and showing gratitude towards your relationships, because you need to feel connected to the one who's supervising. If there's no feeling of bonding or any sense of relationship, the team members might feel alienated. I think that's the word to use. They might not feel appreciated, and they might question why they're doing it, and it would reduce the efficiency of their work, for example.
I think that's very excellently put. Sarah?
Yeah, I agree with Vishal that once feel connected, so like we feel empowered. Like if somebody appreciate us, we would do more better. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. Sabrina?
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. So, if it's okay, can I like pop in a little bit of science here, if it's okay.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, this is a conversation. Yeah, go ahead.
So when someone criticizes us or insults us or humiliates us, the the response that gets activated inside of our body is the fight or flight response. So basically we feel threatened and our whole system starts thinking, how can I escape this situation, how can I run away? And when our whole system is focused on the thought of running away, we cannot really learn from our mistake, we cannot really grow, we cannot get better. In order to get better, in order to grow and develop, our bodies need to be at the rest and digest response. And that response only happens when someone makes you feel very comfortable, when someone validates you, and when someone appreciates you, and when someone is kind to you. That's when you are physically capable of actually learning from your mistake and actually growing.
Yeah, I think you mentioned a really important point about, sometimes people in the team do make mistakes, and maybe those mistakes are, like, maybe you're right that they did make those mistakes, and those mistakes are entirely their responsibility. But it's always about seeing how we can shift the perspective such that they feel that they're still given a chance, and that there is a willingness in that relationship to correct that mistake rather than criticize them for it.